Astronauts to the moon.
10, 9, ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Not to get off track here, but I feel like we're in the Truman Show, and we're in a snow globe, and they just shook it up.
Welcome to reality.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. You're tuned in to your protection from deception right here at truthfrequencyradio.com. And consider yourself lucky because you're listening to the number one show on TFR Radio on Monday nights between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. and midnight Eastern. And that show is now. It's Jeranism, Monday Night Raw. I'm your host, Jeran from Jeranism, and my tag team partner, my rhyme, my reason, and my raw co-host. She also sleeps with me, but that's because she has to, my wife, Missa. Babe, how are you?
Doing just fine.
Just fine, fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Excited for the show tonight?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Me too. Very excited. There's not a ton of people that really impress me. It's kind of a short list. And in the research department, or Truth or Movement, basically there's not very many that I can look up to as kind of an aspiration or somebody I wish I could be like, and if I ever get to be 20% as good as he is, I will be happy. He's somebody who's great with the same thing that we're all in search for, and that search is why we're all here. Who are we? Where are we? Where do we live? And I can think of nobody better than our guest tonight. Arguably one, if not the best read and well-researched individuals I've ever followed. He has so much knowledge in his head, sometimes you have to kind of stand back in awe. For years, he's been an outspoken critic of the government. He's against the powers that shouldn't be. He has been a critic of the Vatican, the Pope, against organized religion. He's been a major figure in the freedom and liberty movement, syncretism, the occult. He has such a vast amount of info in his head that it simply is amazing to me. As a researcher, like I said, if I ever get to be half as good, it would be impressive. And so his YouTube channel is filled with a ton of his great info and teachings. His channel, which is called MrAstrotheology, and that's MR Astrotheology, all one word, covers all his wonderful work from astrology to health, incredible Bible research, the universe, the classics like the Iliad and the Odyssey, the Zodiac, Fibonacci numbers, ancient religions, Freemasonry, Illumination, you name it. I could spend the next 3 hours just naming the topics he's covered. So instead, I'll let him tell us all about it. I'm honored to welcome our guest, Mr. Santos Bonacci. Santos, how are you, sir?
After that very, very kind and humbling and loving introduction, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Great. Wow. Thank you so much, Jeran. And is it Missa?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so kindly. That's very kind. I appreciate that very, very much.
Like I said, sometimes you got to stand back in awe of, you rank up there with me with Jordan Maxwell and some of the other, greats that simply I can't believe sometimes when I watch your stuff, how much you've got in your head. It's impressive. So very nice to have you on. There's so much I want to ask and so much I want to discuss. First, I wanted to talk to you kind of about religion. Because for my wife and I, it's actually kind of rare that we ever meet somebody who shares our beliefs. So real quick, I'll just summarize that, and then you can tell us if we're on the same page. But that each of us carries a divine piece of a piece of the divine, that divine spark, and that religions are meant to confuse and rob us of that divinity, and that the Bible is basically a great book, but a hidden book of kind of veiled astrology or astrotheology, if you will. And we believe that we are our own saviors. That we got to drop the ego and realize that, who we are inside and promoting truth and love and not being on the lookout for a savior because I know my wife and I both think that there's no savior coming. It's already here. It's us. And then we also think the earth is flat. So
That's a big one.
are we actually talking to somebody that shares our core beliefs?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that totally. That's essentially what syncretism teaches. It's showing how to sync things up. You see, we're looking for how to divide.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the modus operandi of good old Rome, London, DC, and that gang of corporate thieves that have stolen really all of our, over the last couple hundred years at least anyway, since Copernicus, they've stolen our true cosmologies and, understandings and knowings of our place in the universe and how it works. And we all understood that the creation is produced by light, and light is energy. And how that energy manifests is how and how good we can interpret the manifestation of that energy grants us more consciousness and more ability and more divinity. And so understanding the nature of light, God is light, source light, we will really just expand our consciousness. So the Saviour is in the light, and the light is in knowing and intelligence. There's nothing more virtuous than intelligence, wisdom and love. That's the Trinity, the Holy Trinity. But intelligence has been forsaken due to the false prophets that have put themselves in the place of teachers and are dumbing down the people deliberately. So essentially what I'm doing, Jeren, is I'm just helping people to see the beautiful, beautiful wisdom that we had from the ancients. It was syncretic, it was unifying, and it was permeated the whole universe, and then came what I call the infestation of the demons. Those who fell from on high. Now, we all fell. If you understand the science of light, there are two realms of existence: the transcendental, what we call the metaphysical, hyperdimensional, whatever you want to call it, counter space, and then there's the dimensional, the spatial and temporal world that we live in. You see, and so we actually come from the causal world of cause is one, effect is two. Let's just get down to simple things. So in this world of effect, polarity, duality, etc., dimension, time, it's a temporal place. Time is Chronos, Chronos is Saturn, Saturn is Satan. It's the world of Satan. Mm-hmm. And it's a poor reflection. It's the Malkuth of the Kether in Kabbalah. So it's the worldly Jerusalem as opposed to the spiritual Jerusalem. So in this world here, yes, we are conditioned, and the rulers of the world that have taken on the role of demons, basically in Bhagavad Gita there's two types of individuals in creation: demigods, us, the ones going up, the Elohim, and then there's the Nephilim, the fallen ones. To fall means, well, you fell from that beautiful place. You wanted to, experience the world of matter, the red and the blue, the red shift and the blue shift, the red pill, the blue pill. And so you wanted to taste matter, red is fire, blue is water. And the world, these are the two active agents of the universe. And so if we want to participate in that lower transverse wave world, well, we're fallen. So we know we're fallen. But the thing is, there are three conditions. There's hell, there's purgatory, and paradise. And we can choose to live in either one of those. Doesn't matter where you live, whether you live on the plane of the earth or the seven subterranean hellish or heavenly planets according to Srimad Bhagavatam, you will still be in a temporal condition of suffering. And so what the holy science is helping us to do, to syncretize things and to unify. So we can live in the world of unity, in duality, as Pythagoras called it.
So are you a big fan of Walter Russell? Because I noticed a lot of what you just talked about with the light and stuff. That's what he, a lot of his research showed me.
Yeah, massive, massive. If it wasn't for Walter Russell, who I discovered, say, about 2008-9, I wouldn't understand the nature of light and energy. And I do now, and I can confidently say that I have mastered most of the principles of light, and that's grace to Walter Russell, and in particular, an individual who is really, really teaching the science of magnetism and explaining it like no other in history, Ken Wheeler. Have you discovered Ken Wheeler?
Yeah, absolutely. Really great guy. He's he explains things a little over my head sometimes. You got to watch his videos, 2 or 3 times. But I have not heard anybody with better knowledge, especially with magnetism, than him. No, there's never been anyone. He's standing on the shoulders of greats like Tesla and Maxwell and Faraday and all the guys that he acknowledges. But he has the advantage of being able to show his explain magnetism, not describe it, with modern technology. And so you can see clearly the principles of the universe. And what a better subject to talk about than that? How about we talk about energy and the 3 principles of the universe? Jaron, how would you like that? Yeah, that sounds great. Absolutely. And I was going to ask you real quick about Ken Wheeler, just something we've noticed, how important it is to be a teacher like he is, the way that he shows it, the way that he explains it, because, we grew up in schools and public schooling where you basically had a teacher that the extent of her knowledge was reading out of a book. And as a student, you just have to answer a test. You just get the knowledge, you write it down, and it really dumbs down the entire population because all you're doing is just you're a repeater. You're taught to be a repeater. You're taught everything's already been discovered. Every scientific fact has already been explored. And it really kind of puts you in that doldrum, that shitty mood, because there's, why would I even try? There's nothing left. I don't, So I just think it's really important to find people like Wheeler. For me, I never really could understand what a polymath was until reading a lot of Walter Russell stuff. And, that's why I was able to understand what that means when somebody just, gets it,
And when it kind of sounds like a no-brainer, but when the teacher actually fully understands what they're talking about, then the students will actually be able to understand too. I know it sounds kind of dumb, but it's true.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. The teachers are turning up. They're turning up in full force. It's great to see, and I think it's a great time to be alive and to be conscious and to be intelligent. The intelligent ones are paying attention. That's all they're doing. There's nothing exceptional about understanding to the level that Ken Wheeler does. And he even says that. He says, look, I feel like a dumbass myself, so how ignorant is the world if they can't see the things I can see? And so clearly we have someone who can explain what light is, which has never been the case before, even with the likes of Faraday and Maxwell. Why so? Well, because most of these guys have been pointing to the electromagnetic aspect of light. Mm-hmm. And so that's fine because it's electromagnetic. Okay, that's the wave component. But see, herein lies the problem. They are quantum thinking. They're looking for quantities. So they believe in what Walter Russell called a ghost or a phantasma, the particle. Photons, they believe that these are traveling particles. And so, as Einstein said, we cannot explain the universe with the particle model or the wave model separately, but together we can, and yet we can explain it, but we can't understand it. Basically, essentially, is what he was saying. Well, this is why, and it's quite simple. And Ken Wheeler has unveiled this so beautifully, so wonderfully. It's just a delight to watch his beautiful presentations on his YouTube channel, Theoria Apotheosis. And he explains that light is a coaxial circuit. And so what does that mean? Well, it's that it is, apart from just being electromagnetic, it has a dielectric longitudinal pulse perturbation component. So the longitudinal component is essentially Schallberger's, standing wave, the scalar wave of Tesla, and it is the spiritual dielectric energy of the universe, and it's a pulse. So the pulse produces the divergent transverse wave, which is what we called electromagnetism. And that wave, Walter Russell said, if you want to know the secret of the universe, it's in the wave. And that's true, in the sine wave, the torus field vector wave. And so what you have is a particle pulse universe. And this is where all of man's woes lie. This is the seed of all of man's problems, in that they can't see the spiritual pulse behind the material illusory manifestation, the wave. And so they go beyond the illusion of the wave and look for an even more powerful illusion, the particle. So they build a world of just pure material delusion, because it's not even anywhere near reality. And so it's so sad that they can't understand light, that light is a pulse. The universe is an on and off universe, hence the Om, which is also interchangeable with N. On. The sun's name is On, Solomon. Hence, Amun, on, is the fact that it's suggesting on and off. And it's telling us that it's a pulse wave universe, not a particle wave universe. And pretty much if you correct that in your mind and in your heart, everything else is corrected, because then you understand the transcendental nature of energy and where it comes from counter space.
Yeah, I think just looking at Walter Russell when he talks about electricity and the movement that's involved in that, and looking at magnetism as being the silencer of that electricity, I think just taught me so much to see, the ebb and the flow, the give and the take, that's what the universe is. And, I think that the number one step for anybody out there that's looking to, like you said, it's not impressive just because you're awake, but that first step is simply, accepting that you don't know everything and opening your mind to everything that comes in, and just being able to think for yourself, meaning I love doing research, and it's just become a passion to listen to other people. And everybody's not perfect, meaning I don't expect anybody to give me 100% truth. We're all on a mission, on a search. And so you take the good that resonates with you, that feels good, that feels right, that promotes love and life and liberty and justice, and you throw away the bad, the stuff that doesn't work. And people would be so shocked when you just do that and you realize you don't know everything, and neither does anybody else. And the amount of growth that you can have in a year is unbelievable. It really is.
Oh yeah, when you humble yourself and acknowledge that you don't know much, and there's a lot to know, and knowledge is related to consciousness, which is related to the saying in Hindu, Sat Chit Ananda, which is Sat is existence, Saturn, time, Sat, Chit is consciousness, and Ananda is bliss. So we see the consciousness. That's our essential nature. Our essential nature is eternity, existence, Sat, consciousness, Chit, and Ananda, bliss. And so we can have those things when we really respect consciousness and the intelligence of the universe and the creator, the source creator. The source creator is called Krishna in the East. In the West, it's Christ. Same word. One is a good cowherd, Krishna. The other is a good shepherd, Christ. And these relate to Aries and Taurus, the two first signs of the sine wave. Aries is always first. March the 21st, Aries. Second sign is always Taurus, the two horned animals. Those horns depict the spirographic energy of the Lord, which is dielectric light, in that the horns of the ram, the ovine, and the horns of the bull, the bovine, in the cerebrum and the cerebellum. Cerebrum is cerebrum, Aries, in the top of your head. That's where it rules, and the cerebellum is where Taurus rules. These are the two signs, the first two signs of any ecliptic anywhere in the universe. This is the science of 12. If you're looking for 12, you just look at the color green. In your heart, there is a green heart chakra. It has 12 petals. And so when you look at the colors and the capacitance, there's red shift, blue shift. Red light is low capacitance. Blue light is high capacitance. And so this is what's going on with magnetic energy of the universe, red shift, blue shift. And so what's happening is, if we understand the nature of light, that it has different colors, have different capacitance, we can manipulate magnetism for the benefit of mankind and use this spiritual force by understanding its 12ness. And the green light teaches this, the 12 petals of the green light. The dodecahedron teaches this. The dodecahedron is the ether, is the dielectricity. It has 12 faces of pentagons. Mm-hmm. And so that's 12 by 5, that's 60. That's where we get our root 60, our clocks, and everything, and the 360 degrees. It all comes from the dodecahedron and the 5 polyhedra. And so the 12ness, when you learn to map the Taurus field, astrologically, always starting with Aries, and that's cardinal fire, and then there's Taurus, then Gemini, and then it reaches the wave amplitude. That's the Tropic of Cancer. The top of every wave is called the Tropic of Cancer. The bottom is the Tropic of Capricorn. Water and earth, feminine signs. So the wave amplitude. So we start to learn now that the wave, this temporospatial wave of creation, electromagnetism, is creating this this dimension that we live in, and that we appear to be trapped in, whilst we have these bodies. And it's simple to understand how we got here. We desired this physical interaction and to experience things in time. Otherwise, we would have stayed on the longitudinal pulse, and we would have stayed in the transcendental realms. But we took the fall, you see.
By choice, or do you think it was a result of a previous action or a previous previous choice or bad decisions, or do you think it was a choice that we made to come?
Well, the Hermetica teaches that it's both. Some have been sent here as like a punishment, and others chose to come here to help others to get out of the cave that Adam and Eve were put into. A cave, like Plato's Republic cave. And so the ones who see the light and see the true forms outside go back to tell their friends, look, do you realize that there's a whole other world out there, and there's lots of color and dimension? We've just been hanging out in a cave. This is like a shadow. And they try to kill him. You see, all the prophets that God sends, according to the Hebrews in the Jewish mythology, they were all stoned, weren't they? Yeah. Yeshua gets crucified. Yeah. So what we're seeing is that, as Plato said, hard and laborious it is to find the true knowledge of the true science of light and difficult and dangerous it is to publicise it. So you will know in your heart whether you've been sent here or whether you came by choice. And so this will indicate whether you're a demigod or a demon. Demons are anything, any entity, person, individual, egregore, ghost, energy form, emotion form, thought form that is self-serving. That's
right.
it.
They're the ones you see in every newscast that can't cry. The ones who will go ahead with hoaxes and false flags. And
They can mimic emotion, but they don't have any real one.
no, there's nothing real there. I was wondering, have you heard or looked into, or maybe you follow Michael Tellinger and his recent, falling into the flat Earth? Have you seen that?
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. You see, all the intelligent ones are using their own minds. They're leaving the herd mind behind of academia and mainstream, and they've got courage. So they're thinking for themselves. Good on you, Michael. Pat on the back and a cigar.
Yeah, I just love his work. And, he comes right out and just says, even somebody who's got a globe as their logo, and, it's just so big for him because he saw that the ideas of the physical manifestations of shape and matter and the magnetic fields, that they're all toroidal shapes, and that fits in better than anything he's ever seen. So, he was able to just say, no, this makes more sense. Over here we've got liars and people that are promoting something that isn't true. But we got our first speak here, Santos.
I don't understand why when I needed you both the most, you would leave me.
My dear child, we love you and would never leave you.
When you see one set of prints, that's because it wasn't on a Monday.
Need a friendly voice?
Call Grandma.
But if you need truth at all costs, then join us for a threesome.
Ooh.
Mondays 7 to 10 p.m. Pacific, only on truthfrequencyradio.com.
You're listening to the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
No hate, no hype, no fear.
Welcome back to Truth Frequency Radio. Oh. I'll talk. Listening to Monday Night Raw, and we have our special guest, Santos Bonacci, with us. And Santos, before we get going with more incredible knowledge that you have, I wanted to just ask you a couple, if you don't mind, personal questions. They're not really specific other than I just wanted to hear, and I think a lot of our listeners would probably want to know too, a little bit about your upbringing, what you maybe what you were raised under, or whatever, just kind of a history of where you came from. Because from just surface, it's like you appeared out of the sky, out of from heaven.
Yeah. Well, look, I had a really sort of a normal, if you could call it that, upbringing. Went to a state school in the country, northeast Victoria, Australia, born in '63. The only things that stood out was the fact that I was bilingual, and hence, in those days, the ethnicity of the individual was something, to be pointed at. And so I remember being different for being Italian, and also different for being a Jehovah's Witness. Although I was baptized a Catholic when I was about 2, shortly thereafter my parents became Jehovah's Witnesses. So I did that growing up, and then, of course, rebelled in my early teens. I was very mature as a 13, 14-year-old, and I just wanted nothing to do with it. But then, funny enough, in my latter teens, 19, 20, I wanted to turn around and be spiritual and go back to serving Jehovah, quote unquote. So I did for a couple of decades, and I was very zealous. And I was a good student of the Bible, and I remember being a good student even when I was a little boy studying the Two Babylons book in the book study, being 5, 6, 7, seeing all those spooky Revelation beasts coming out of the sea with 2 horns and lizard tongues. So I was theological, linguistic, and musical. Started playing the guitar at the age of, 8 or 9. And had a telescope when I was about that old too, so loved the skies and the stars. So nothing really has changed. I'm still doing languages. I speak to a different degree and level of expertise, 7 different languages, and I play a couple of instruments musically. So I've always loved languages and music. I've loved history. I've always studied history. When I was first baptized as a Jehovah's Witness in 1982, I think I was, it was 84, sorry about that. Around those years I started studying a lot of esoteric books. I just couldn't keep away from it. Although I was warned I shouldn't be because they're from the devil, I continued to read things like Reen Norbergen's Secret of the Lost Races. That really shook me to learn about, pre-flood, super civilized world, and all the oop parts that we've found, historians find, and then suddenly they're found boxed up and wrapped up in the back of museums, and we don't talk about them.
Yes, it's got plenty of that stuff, huh? As far as the 7 languages, Santos, is English the strangest, I guess, language, or do you think it's maybe because you grew up with it, but from everything I've seen, it certainly looks like it's a coded language. Do you see that in other languages as well, or is English kind of separate, set aside for that reason?
Oh, English is special beyond description. I could talk for hours about how special Anglish, Angelish is. It's a language of angels, It is 100% pure atomic language. Now, I have already revealed that we do have all is atum, as the Egyptians said. Hence, everything is atomic. You have an anatomy. We study words. We call it etymology, another way of saying atomology. Sound, it's all tom-toms. Drummers play their tom-toms. All percussive instruments have dom, dom, tom, tom in them. Because why? Because all is atum. And so English is an atomic language. Hebrew is atomic. Sanskrit is atomic. None of those languages precede any other language. They are all atomic. I'm going to release in the next few weeks. Finally, I will. I've been saying this for about 1.5 years now, and people can attest to that. I've said it so many times. I'm going to release a 400-page presentation full of all is atum, proving beyond a doubt that there is nothing in the universe going on other than atum. And essentially what that is the dielectric, the magnetic, and the electric trinity of the Godhead. That's all there is in the universe. There's only 3 field modalities: the dielectric, black light; magnetic, white light, moving light; and the child of those 2 field modalities, which is electrification, a hybrid of dielectricity and magnetism. And electricity, as Walter Russell taught, is red and blue. Magnetism is white, and here, grace to the work of Ken Wheeler, we discover that dielectricity is the black light. And so you have this interlacing energy field that is produced by the 2 co-eternal conjugate principles of the universe: force and motion, and inertia and acceleration, charge, discharge, counter space, space, dimension, intradimensional, white light. See, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, if you're looking for that, look at the sun, white incoherent light, and then look at the rainbow, and you see all those chromatic, beautiful colours. They all have different capacitance, and they are the servants of Snow White. They are the Seven Dwarfs. And every science, every time you put your nose in a book, all you're learning about is the Trinity of God, dielectricity, magnetism, and electricity. Osiris, first, always put the dielectricity first, always. Dielectricity precedes all other principles, all of them. Isis, and she's always holding her little baby Horus in her arms, because the sun is a pure manifestation of the red and blue child of white light, because the sun is electrical in its transverse energy, but it is also a pulse. It has a pulse, a dielectric, horizontal, instantaneous action at a distance pulse. And this is the pulse of the universe, which Pierluigi Egina, a contemporary of Marconi, worked with him for 10 years in the 30s, and then went on to study the sun for 30 years. He died about 20 years ago, but you can see all his videos online where some have English subtitles, where he explains that the sun is totally empty and black on the inside, and it has a heart in it, and it pulsates at the same rate as our hearts. Hence, in our hearts, the green light, the green chakra, this 12ness, the green energy, is the field perturbation. This is the center of our torus field. It is the core of our apple of Apollo, which is the torus field which surrounds our bodies. That's the apple that Eve ate to partake of duality and to live in the world of the sine wave, or the sin of Eve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really awesome. And you talked earlier about the number 7, and I mean that number is found everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the most loved of all the numbers of the Lord. The Elohim are 7. The notes of the scale are 7. The colours of the rainbow are 7, because everything comes from these original 7. From source, then comes mundane force, which is called red shift, blue shift. If you look at a rainbow, you'll see blue on one end and red shift at the other end, because it's telling you that this is the world of blue blood, red hot water, cold blue water, red pill, blue pill. The Democrat.
There you go.
Roses are red, violets are blue. And basically your police sirens, your ambulance sirens, your stars and stripes, red, white and blue. The Union Jack, well, wouldn't that be the sun, Jacob, Israel, uniting on the equinoxes and the solstices? Hence, you see that's just the cross, the labarum of Constantine, which is depiction of the sun going through the equinoxes, and everything is from the Tropic of Cancer to the Tropic of Capricorn. And everything will be doing this, waxing and waning through this helix, this double helix of energy. Hence the sun is Helios, the father of the DNA, Dan, DNA, DAN. See, and it's also an anagram for AND, and andros, man. See, Dan is Adan in Spanish. That's how you say Adam. And in Japanese, Dan means man. Dansei, D-A-N-S-E-I, Dan-sei. Well, that's the Dan of the DNA of Andrew, the man, andros. And that's who we are. And if you put an H in front of that, you have hand, because we are defined by our hand. Andrew, the handy Andy, has a hand with 10 fingers, and that hand is also what makes him a man, from the Latin mano, the hand. 10. Yeah, the number 10, which defines man and human completion. And 12 is spiritual completion, and they together make 22, catch 22, the numbers of the 22 amino acids and the Kabbalistic 22 tarot cards, the trump cards, because if you model the torus field with the numbers 22 and 12, you will understand all things. See the work of Stan Tenen, a Jewish scholar who talks about how to model energy through the torus field, or the apple. He makes it an apple, and he breaks the apple up in 3 segments, and he puts his hand in there, and he models all the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet from the torus field.
Wow.
There's nothing new under the sun. This is all old wisdom coming back.
So did you basically start your studying into all this stuff in your young teens when you started rebelling against your upbringing? Is that pretty much when you started? Because there's so much that you learned. It seems like it must have started then.
Yeah, look, I was a weird kind of a teenager because I discovered Led Zeppelin when I was an early teenager, and that was the biggest consciousness expansion I ever had. And we were just sitting around, smoking good cannabis and doing Monty Python skits and listening to great bands like Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and Supertramp and all of those consciousness expanding rock bands, So I'm thankful for that period. I'm just so grateful for discovering Led Zeppelin and entheogens and how to expand the consciousness, because I already had, say, 12 years of, being brought up with theology and angels and and revelation and demons. So
that.
So it was like a tornado growing up, it was like torturous. And then I came back in my teens and was a zealous Jehovah's Witness, a really good boy, preaching to help people to save them, and I was a regular pioneer and a ministerial servant. Served in a Portuguese congregation for 4 years, an Italian-speaking one for another 4 years, Spanish, French. So I used my languages to serve Jehovah. And in the meantime, though, I wasn't just sitting on my laurels and thinking that I knew everything. So I did do my study, and I did turn stones, which I was told, don't you overturn that stone. That one there's got devils hiding under it, and you'll learn bad things, and they'll take you away from Jehovah.
Well, we went through the same kind of upbringing, so I think it's important. I think that having gone through religious upbringing and then breaking out of it and even exploring an atheistic world for a short time, you have to kind of really experience that all and turn over some stones in order to find what we feel like is the correct path. Since you spoke Italian, did some work in Italy, did you ever read any of Tommaso Campanella?
Yeah, he was Calabrian like myself. Yeah, so I'm aware of all the Calabrians that have contributed to. One was also one of the servants of the Jesuits who fixed up the Gregorian calendar in 1560. Anyway, we know when it was around there. That was also a Calabrian, but he was also a zealous, truther of the science, wasn't he?
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know for sure whether he's a relation or a relative of mine, but same last name, and definitely my family goes back to Calabria. And we started out on our journey reading a lot of his stuff, and for the first time finding somebody who was really pushing people towards the book of nature over the book of from God, considering that none of us can be sure that book hasn't been tampered with, and there's certainly plenty of signs that it has been. And once you realize that the book of nature and what's in your heart is really all you can trust.
One. Yeah, well, at least the nature is.
Yeah, they may try and indoctrinate us, but you can get that back, and that's the good thing. And once we read a lot of what he wrote, and the guy was jailed for 27 years, and basically learned a lot while he was in there. Talks a lot about realizing that there was a God because he found demons, that he was able to go to that low place, and in that realized that there's a place to aspire to, there's a place to ascend to, and that's why we're here, and that the evidence of the Creator is, or the creation, is everywhere. The divinity is in everything, it is everything. And so, he was a big influence on us to really get us going on this path, and we've looked up to him a lot.
He promoted keeping an open mind and letting people think for themselves, with the whole Galileo thing.
Right. He even wrote in defense of Galileo and said, a lot of people have turned that to say now, oh, he was saying that, Galileo was correct, which if you actually get a hold of the book, which a lot of Campanella's stuff has been hidden, it's underneath the Vatican, you can't find it. But the stuff you can find, you can see clearly he wasn't saying anything. In fact, he didn't believe in what Galileo did, but he was simply saying, hey, we need to allow people to search. We're never going to find the truth unless we let people, search things out. And you can't just tell them to shut up. Let them do what they want to do as long as they aren't, profaning God or hurting others.
So they told Campanella to shut up. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
Banned Galileo's book and everything. So, no, I think it's a big move. It was a big, part of our waking up. Santos, can you tell us a little bit about when you came into the flat Earth? Was that about 2 years ago, like all of us, or did you kind of have ideas before that, or was it after that? I guess I just don't really know where you picked it up, because I found you because of the flat Earth, and then became a big fan in the last 2 years. But can't really remember where it was that you. Did you have like a coming out, or was it something you kind of had felt before that?
Yeah, I did. I came out in the start of 2015 with an article on the Analema, a note which I published in March Aries of 2015, dealing with the Analema and showing how the Analema clearly shows that the sun is circling above the head, and it does a big loop at the Tropic of Capricorn, closer to the Earth, and a smaller circle in a vortex shape at the top, higher up and further away from the Earth at the Tropic of Cancer. And then I did a couple of shows, one with on the higher side chats with a young, oh my God, I hope I don't forget his name, poor brother, because I love him so much. Anyway, I did a show on there and came out with it around June. And then in August, I did that little stint, 7 weeks on the inside, where the bar people had their way with me for 7 weeks and locked me up in a cage. Yep. And then after that, I realised, okay, well, I had a lot of time to think, and I thought, I'm not going to play around with truth. People are looking to me for truth because I'm saying that I'm a truther, and I'm saying that I love truth more than anything else. Mm-hmm. So I already know that we live on a disc, horizontal level plane, and I came out and did a few shows, but I thought, no, I'm going to give it everything from now on, because I realised then how important the deception of the globe, which converts into the religion of globalism, the one world economy of globalism of the black nobility Jesuits, and the one world religion and government, world governance, New World Order, which all depends on a false idol called the globe, which I call the Santa Ball. And the people who teach this nonsense, these Jesuit Copernicans, are the cult of Santa Ball. And that's how they'll go down in history. Santos Bonacci and the cult of Santa Ball will be synonymous forever. And I will be the prophet sent from who knows where. they might say from Abaddon or the devil, but I hope from source to destroy and dismantle this Humpty Dumpty, Santa Claus concept of a spinning, faster than the speed of sound, Santa Ball, upside down and wobbling. I think
we found once we saw it and we dived into it a little bit and made our first video and didn't expect to have any kind of response that was worth anything. And once we saw people saying, you know what, we've never looked at it that way. I just chose to be that one. I said, I'm just going to say what I feel, say what I think, say what's in my heart, and if it's wrong, then it's wrong. And the more I look into it, the more we're really realizing that, everything we were taught is meant to enslave you, is meant to confuse you. And really, your senses can tell you so much, and your stomach and your gut feeling. And I guess the hardest part for us is we really thought by telling people about it that they would be able to look at NASA's stuff and see it the way we do, that there is no proof. It's all just a movie for you. It's put out there to appease you. It creates atheism. It creates the idea that we're here on accident in this endless universe of,
and everything you do here doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. You're not responsible for your actions. And we really just are trying to change that. That I really feel like if people were never robbed of their real place where they live and the real divinity that's in them and their ability to make everybody else's life better by just brightening somebody's day, smile, show that love rather than being a jerk. It just seems so easy to me to fix the world, yet it is impossible. I'm sure you see it. It's a tough job because there's a lot of people out there that have fallen in love with the lie. There's a lot of people that are in love with their slavery. That's the hardest part.
Yeah, very, very much so. That's what I've noticed, brother. There's two minds. There's the individual free-thinking type mind, and then there's the one who thinks he's free but belongs to the herd, and he does what the herd does. If the sheep go over the cliff, he'll go over the cliff.
Yep.
He will follow because he feels comfortable. He's surrounded. He cannot forsake his mind. It's like a pack of dogs. And this is fair enough, man, because they've only had very few evolutions and revolutions around the cycle of necessity evolving their souls, and they haven't done great works, and they carry a lot of karma. Hence, they're young in a sense, and they don't know how to think for themselves. So we have to have some pity for these people. They're belonging to the animal mind more than they think they do.
Yeah, the hardest one for me, and I know I can only imagine you get it even more than I do, that the group that is the hardest for me is Christians, because they're, for the most part, they're good people, and they really will come at you if you don't proclaim Jesus as your Savior, and that He's coming back to save you, and He's going to come back and all of a sudden, I guess, give up His whole idea of loving your neighbor, because He's going to come with a sword and chop up all the Satanists. I guess that's what they think. But do you have that issue as well? Is that a tough group to conversate with?
Yeah, because look, when you talk about Christians and churchgoers, there's 30,000 denominations, and there's a lot of different Jesuses out there. Some Jesuses don't drink coffee, one's got blue eyes, he's dark, another one's red-haired. And so you're going to be they're killing themselves. They're doing a fine job of killing each other. Mormon against Jehovah's Witness, against Catholic and Protestant, and they're all an eclectic bunch of, poor people who are involved in a corporate structured state church. It's not a Christian church. It's Christendom or Christendom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so essentially they are they've been reduced. It's reductionism. What you do is you reduce the holy writings to something literal. So now Jesus, came in the flesh 2,000 years ago, and He's coming again. Watch out, there He is in the skies. Look, there He is. And so you've got all these false alarms. He came in 1963, but then He didn't, and so they committed suicide, and everyone's waiting for a literal return. Well, the Christ that returns, if you know the ecliptic and you know the astrological ages, Aries is followed by Pisces, is followed by Aquarius. We were in the age of Pisces, ruler thereof being Jupiter, Zeus.
Well, hold that thought because we're going to get a break, and that gets into a good subject. I wanted to kind of get into that and the whole idea of astrotheology and Catholicism, and then also
Washington.
Congressional Democrats are calling for a bipartisan and independent panel to investigate Russia's meddling in the election. Maryland Senator Ben Cardin says the hacking may have further emboldened Moscow.
They could use similar tactics moving forward to compromise the Trump administration, or to attack our national security apparatus, or to deal with our international partners.
I'm Ann Cates.
Wherever you are, make it Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome back. Oh,
I was gonna
we jumped on each other there. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I love that song.
I know, me too.
I wanted just to keep going.
Good song. We're back. It's Monday Night Raw. We're talking to Santos Bonacci, and everybody in the chat room thought this was taped, and we were deceiving them. One thing actually says, "This is not live, gang. We are being deceived on Truth Frequency Radio."
Well,
I said, "No, this is live. I just wasn't looking at the chat."
And if we weren't live, we wouldn't be able to be reading that right now.
That's true, but maybe we are. Maybe we just we pre-taped this, and I knew what they were going to be typing.
Or we just cut in real quick and put this in, and then...
It will be out. We're going to bounce here in a second. There was a question for you, Santos, from the chat group. Somebody asked, why do you think it's a disc? So I'll let you go ahead and explain that, and then we can get into a little of the religious stuff we were talking about.
Oh yeah, let's do that. But let me just continue on with.
Sure.
I was gonna do that actually, and it has to do with gyroscopes. The Earth is a disc. Think of a gyroscope. Have that image in your mind. We'll get back to it now. Pisces. Pisces was the constellation that was turning up for 2,000 years on March the 21st on the horizon, which is the vernal equinox and how you measure the age that you're in. And the ruler of that is Pisces is Jupiter, Jesus. And so did something historically, factually come to the earth called Jesus? No, it's transcendental. If you want to reduce things to the literal, the letter of the word kills. If you want to die spiritually, go ahead and make a historical, a factual savior your model, because this is what's called worshipping false idols, because the Christ, the dielectric source energy of the universe, is unlimitedly intelligent and is the symbol of life and never dies and is never historical. It's not a matter of historicity. We're looking at scriptures that are transcendental. Here's how the Hindus explain it. I'm reading from a book called Jaiva Dharma, Part 1. This is an old book from the 1800s, talking about Krishna, because Krishna, you see, has the same pastimes as Jesus. Little baby Krishna does all these little things and impresses people. Then he grows up and chants everybody, and he's got 12 this and 12 that surrounding him. Well, this is how they explain it. Sri Krishna takes birth, performs activities, and gives up his body. So how can his form be eternal? Lahiri Mahasaya asked. Sri Krishna's form is Sat Chit Ananda. I mentioned that in the at the start of the show. Ever existing, full of knowledge, and completely blissful. Yeah, Sat Chit Ananda. Babaji replied. His birth, activities, and giving up of the body have no connection with mundane matter. Then why have such descriptions been given in Mahabharat and other scriptures? You might as well just put the word Bible in there for all Westerners. Babaji answered, the eternal truth defies description, for it is beyond words. The pure soul, in his spiritual aspect, sees the transcendental form and pastimes of Sri Krishna. When he describes that supreme reality through words, it appears just like worldly, mundane history. Those who are capable of extracting the essence from scriptures, like the Mahabharat, experience Krishna's pastimes in a specific way. However, when people of mundane intelligence hear these descriptions, they interpret them in different ways. So basically he's saying there's a time-space way of interpreting the scriptures, and there's an atemporal, unconditioned way, which is the one that will benefit you eternally and not temporally. Just like, doing weightlifting and exercising the body so you can have a beautiful body is only temporal. If you stop doing it after 6 weeks, you're going back to flaccid Fred. With that beer gut and all of those flaccidy bits. You've got to maintain it, don't you? So this is why, the mythological Jesus, the eternal wisdom of the perennial philosophy says, do not store your treasures on earth where rust and moth destroy. store them in heaven where neither moth nor rust can consume, and they are eternal, because that is the atemporal world where we come from, you know. And so we're headed back there. We can't. The only way we can not get back there is if we decide to be demons, and basically love the ignorance and the darkness more, and the lie, and live for the lie. That's the only way you could possibly escape being unconditioned and eternal one day. It's a deliberate choice, you know. But let's go to the gyroscopes. Then I'll explain to you how our universe is. And as for the churchgoers who want the flat earth disc so that it makes God so important now because we're the center of his creation, well, that's only half true. It's true, but it's so dangerously half true, because, you know, in Bhagavad Gita, which precedes the Bible, you could say, if you want to look at it historically by a few thousand years, says that Brahma creates many universes like this, and essentially they are just torus fields, okay? So our solar system is one universe, okay? And it's a torus field, and the shape of it is like an egg, the golden eggs of mythology, or like a pine cone. The top bit is narrower, so it's 1, and the bottom bit will be phi, 1.618. And these torus fields, our solar system is such a torus field. The center of it is the dielectric plane of the disk of the Earth, just like a gyroscope, except that the accretion disk is not spinning. Everything else is. The vortex around us is. Why do I know? Well, because of what's called gyromagnetic precession. Okay? Every atom, every torus field precesses. So the 25,920 year long Platonic year or precessional year is actually inbuilt into all atomic structure. And so Ken Wheeler would call the torus field, he calls it with 4 words to describe it or explain it, I would say define it properly, and that is reciprocating precessional hyperboloid torus. So the reciprocating means that the dielectric and magnetic convergent and divergent centrifugal and centripetal lines are always interlacing and field pressure mediating, okay, and self-conjugating, a la Dan Winter. So what you have now is the dielectric inertia is seeking motion, and so it goes out in 2 directions, and that is atom and Eve, Adam and Eve, or atom and even, odd and even, because odd numbers are masculine, even numbers are feminine. So when the unit God force, dielectricity, wishes to think and create the electrical illusory world of red and blue, well, then it moves, motion. So mag in Sanskrit means to move, magnetism, magnitude, magnificence. It's all the energy of movement. Magnetism is motion, to move. And she, the Queen of Heaven, Radharani, because I see that as a feminine force, the pure white light of the Virgin Mary of the heavens, Radharani, whatever you want to call it, Isis. And I see the black as masculine because it is resting light. It does not move. It seeks to rest. And these are the co-eternal principles of rest and motion, action and reaction, chaos and order. And so the center of this torus field, massive torus field, the egg of the solar system, has 10 rings around it. So we're living inside a sphere, or 10 spheres, and they are the 10 Sephiroth of the Kabbalistic, from Kether to Malkuth. And in the center you have Tifereth, which is, Tifereth is in the heart, and that is the Christ in the heart. And so what you have now is this 10 spheres surrounding us, and the 8th sphere is the firmament. The 7 below the firmament are Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon, in that order. So they are 7 principalities, 7 realms, called the heavenly planets in Bhagavad Gita. And in astrology, they are just the 7 planets, okay? They correspond to the 7 colors of the rainbow, the 7 everything else, okay? And so the octave is Uranus. Uranus is the heavens. It's the firmament. It's the starry heavens, as opposed to the 7 wandering stars, which are those that I've just mentioned. Okay? Then after that is the crystalline sea, the 9th sphere. Neptune is in that. Poseidon, the god of the underworld or the waters. And then after that is the primum mobile, the first motion, the first sphere. And so what you're looking at when you're looking up to the sky and you see that the dome of the 8th sphere of Uranus, the stars are moving, and then if you remember that it's a reciprocating precessional movement, energy cannot just reciprocate. It has to precess. Like a top. When you spin a top, you'll see that eventually as it slows down, it precesses in the other direction. That's precession. It's starting to precess. And you'll see that on bicycle wheels. Sometimes you'll see the people riding past really fast, but the spokes are actually going backwards. Okay? That's how torus fields work. They precess. And our massive Earth disk surrounded by this torus field is precessing every 25,000 years. Okay? So basically we monitor that cycle by putting up pyramids and stone megaliths to study when those cycles will come around and go around. And essentially that's what the Sphinx is looking at. It's looking at, the lion part of the Sphinx and the Aquarian man part of the Sphinx, hence the axis of Leo Aquarius, which we're now in now, the age of Aquarius, the vernal equinox, and the autumnal ones in Leo. So we're actually back in Leo. The Sphinx is now been, validified, and he's now, completed his precessional cycle.
Yeah, and getting on that subject, with people who are asking about how you discovered it to be a disc, and you were talking about the idea of the gyroscope and how it applies to everything. Do you think that that's the best physical proof that there is? It's just the gyroscope in and of itself?
Well, it's a good image. It's much more accurate than the ball. You've got to give the scientists, I guess, a pat on the back, but no cigar for believing that we live on a convex ball. Because, it's probably just their perspective. And the Jesuits knew back in 43 when they funded 1543 Copernicus. 2 years prior to that, the Farnese family and the Borgia family, black Venetian nobility families, founded the Jesuits. Because of the age of exploration, they realized that they had to globalize the earth in order to trap man in a global prison, not thinking that there are better lands beyond Antarctica and the Arctic Circle, where I believe is where a blue shift is happening and red shift is happening at Antarctica, because the North Pole is really the South Pole, according to Ken Wheeler, and right. Hence it's much, much healthier to live in the Garden of Eden at Mount Meru at the North Pole. And so they don't want you to know that beyond the 81st parallel, you can still live right up until what they call the North Pole. Right. There's beautiful, prosperous lands and good people there, Nordic peoples. Yeah. And that's where we come from.
They just cover it with ice and call it Greenland and tell us that nothing's going on there. Do you think that there is more land beyond the South, and is that something that you think is a good possibility?
We certainly are going to find out. There's definitely a lot of maps now coming out that show that there's more beyond that short, smaller dome section, and then there's other gateways to get to the other lands. In fact, if you look at a contemporary of Admiral Byrd, an Australian by the name of Sir Captain George Hubert Wilkins, he was from Tasmania, Australia, and he actually went, according to his writings, 5,000 miles beyond the South Pole, and found beautiful fertile lands and beautiful countries. Yep. So he described them, and he was a contemporary of Admiral Byrd, who did the same in both quote unquote hemispheres.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever read into or look into the idea of the Iron Republic? and the book that was written. Well, it was actually an article in a magazine, 1903, in a Florida magazine. Yeah, it was a series, and when I read it, it really does have so much truth in it because it's written in 1903, and it's talking about futuristic items, things that we all have now, radios and portable cell phones. These things are being described, mass transit, all those things are in that book because he went down south and they found a channel that had opened up through the ice wall, got to the other side, sailed for 3 or 4 months, and ended up at a place called Iron Republic. And a really interesting story that they met these people and they said, well, they said, oh, you're from America, we know where that's at. And they said, why have you never come and told us? And they said, well, why would we? That you guys are still into war, still into fighting. We don't believe in races and we don't believe in classes. And it's a great story. And at first I said, well, this must be just a story. Well, I went looking for the original magazine, and sure enough, you cannot find a single copy of any Florida magazine anywhere. eBay, it's all been taken out of commission. So that just always leads me to think something's up there. And when you read the book, it just is written by somebody who is telling the truth. And at the beginning, he's talking about, when my story's done, science is going to have to face up to what they've done, and they're going to have to come out with the fact that the Earth is a plane. And by the end of the book, you can tell it's a different author. He's writing about the globe. He's writing about. The story gets almost
cut off.
Yeah,
and
it's
then
really
told from
interesting.
A different point of view.
And again, because I only have the PDF, I said, well, let's go look for the original book. I'll pay money for one. And yeah, like I said, you cannot find any of those magazines. There was a total of 44 volumes from 1900 to 1903. I've never found one for sale on eBay, and that's we're booksellers, so we know that pretty much anything you look for, you can eventually find on eBay. I've never seen one, so don't know if you've read that, but it's definitely an interesting and enlightening kind of read. And it's called Iron Republic by J.P. Ellington?
Something like that. Barrington.
Barrington, that's right, J.P. Barrington. So don't know if you've read that. And then as far as the North, which I find very interesting myself, because I do think the Bible even is describing a home there, whether that be the Garden of Eden or the New Jerusalem. What's your opinion on the North Pole?
Oh, absolutely. It is because it's the tree Yggdrasil of the Nordics. It's the tree of everlasting life that God planted in the center of the garden. This is the garden. It is Bhumandala, a disc, as it says in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5. It talks about the island of Jambudweep that our plane is on, and it calls it Bhumandala. Okay, so we have a lot of confusion because the Srimad Bhagavatam actually uses a lot of different language for the earth. But if we realize that when it uses the word for Gola, which is Bhugola, which means a globe, well, it's talking about the sphere surrounding the Bhumandala disk. You see, we really need to study thoroughly and correctly and not superficially. People are looking for things that will confirm their prejudices already. So, this is how they research, and it's really superficial. It's sad to see, and they will be forever learning but never coming to an accurate knowledge of truth. So it's clear to see that beautiful literature like the volumes of Iron Republic you just spoke about are disappearing. Well, that's the Jesuits. Since 1543, they created the globe and all its ancillary global concepts, like global economy, etc., which is now falling. They've been exposed, and nationalism is coming back, which will defeat globalism for sure, all around the world. In Italy, France, they're going to be smashed, the globalists. So it's a good thing. Because why? Well, because look what happened in the last couple of years. Their false idol has been so attacked that all the intelligent ones, all of them who have done their research, have gone flat, haven't they? And so there's this massive intelligent ones on the plane who know exactly where they live. They have awakened, waiting for the Santa Ballers to wake up, and stop waiting for Santa to come down the chimney, and then we will have smashed it completely. But look, that's how globalism was defeated. don't underestimate the power of this revelation of the flat disk Earth that has come upon us in the last couple of years to have destroyed globalism. It will destroy it. People will want nothing to do with this putrid, demonic, filthy teaching. And we will reject it. Listen, I want to, have we got, say, 4 or 5 minutes before the break? I want to read to you all the names of the Jesuits who have given us the Santa Ball.
Yeah, please do.
All right, this is the cult of Santa Ball, 1500s. The sponsors of Copernicus, Pietro Pomponazzi, Gasparo Contarini, Francesco Giorgi. Okay, these evil Jesuit black nobility agents, they started the Protestant Reformation. They started the Jesuits through Ignatius of Loyola. They were the protector of him. They started the Council of Trent, the most evil, disgusting council in the history of the Vatican, and the Counter-Reformation. These three individuals are responsible for Copernicus, globalism, the globe, and all of this bloodletting of the post-Renaissance beautiful Campanella, Marsilio Ficino, Giovanni Pico della Mirandola, and all of these great guys who gave us all the beautiful science that we have. And then came the Jesuits, and they kicked back with the Counter-Reformation, the Council of Trent, and just destroyed knowledge and introduced the globe. Then in the 1600s, you've got another 100 years of globalism, and then Galileo Galilei was funded by Paolo Sarpi and Fulgencio Micancio. And there's actually an English monk in here too, an English tormentor, a Dominican, who I forget his name now. I wish I had written it down, but he's to be put in with these guys, Sarpi and Micancio, who was Galileo Galilei's case officer. Okay, so that was all staged, the globe war against the flat Earth. Mm-hmm. And then it took another 70 years in the 1700s with Newton. They needed gravity. So it was about 200 years now that they'd been going, trying to get this globe and globalism off the ground because people were too intelligent. You know, in those days, the Renaissance and the age of exploration, people knew that you can't be upside down spinning and wobbling and rotating and all of this motion.
People like Leonardo da Vinci hid these kind of truths in his paintings?
Oh yeah, I can show you countless evidences to suggest that he knew the true science. Yeah, he was being very cautious because you can be ridiculed and lose your life.
Lose your life, yeah, or be put in jail for 27 years just for going against what they wanted to teach. And that's what they did. They played both sides, too, by saying, you're not going to believe what the church says? Well, then we're going to start this science over here. You're going to believe us over there. We'll lie to you somehow.
Yep. Then in the 1700s, the Newtonians were funded by, Newton was funded, Jesuit, by Abbot Antonio Conti and Juan Maria Ortiz, a Spanish. And they basically, founded the materialistic, quanta-based, the laws of Newton and materialism and utilitarianism. And they were the enemies of Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, who discovered calculus and was a true scientist. And they did everything to promote Newton with Descartes in France. And they needed France to go global and the ball, and they finally got their way, destroying Leibniz, who was the last enemy of pseudoscience, got Newton in, so they've got now, Kepler, all Jesuits, Copernicus, Galilei, Newton, and then after about 50 years or more, they consolidated everything, and they got their globe in the early 1800s, really. And through dumbing down the Rothschilds infiltrating Freemasonry, or Masonry, I should say, and dumbing down through that American school and the Jesuits working together with the Jewish Freemasonics, basically just implanted this false idol of the globe and globalism.
I can attest to that because we're going to break here in a second, but I went to a all-boys Catholic Jesuit high school one of the top schools in California, and I can tell you it was confusing to go in as a Catholic and see them push so hard the sciences, because it really, talk about confusing somebody. Luckily, I spent most of my time getting hot.
Truth Frequency Radio, as I explore and report the realities that we all face day to day, while also presenting higher solutions that you may use to change your world. Knowledge is power, and now is the time to power up. So be sure to join us every Tuesday and Thursday evening at 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on Truth Frequency Radio. And remember, wherever you are, make it TFR.
No hate, no hype, no fear. We are TFR, your protection from deception.
Welcome back. You're listening to Truth Frequency Radio and Monday Night Raw. We're here with Santos Bonacci. And Santos, can you just tell everybody real quick where they can find your stuff, your YouTube channel, your websites, and then got some questions for you after that.
Yeah, MrAstrotheology, one word, MR Astrotheology. MrAstrotheology is the YouTube channel. That's where I've got all my stuff, and I'm going to be actually posting. I'm going to be starting a school now, teaching the holy science, astrology, and everything weekly through that channel. So subscribe, share, and stay close to that channel, because you're going to be learning some really amazing stuff about energy and light. And and my universaltruthschool.com is the website.
Okay, Universal Truth School. Is that what you said?
Yep, one word.
Okay, awesome. I wanted to ask your opinion on the satanic, quote-unquote, satanic influence of the Catholic Church and the Vatican. And I've told this story before. The listeners might have heard it, but I'll just tell you real quick because it was a eye-opener for myself. When I was growing up, my mom was real into the church. She was the head of liturgy and music, and so I spent a lot of time as an altar boy and around the church. And there was one day I was kind of playing up around the altar, and I went underneath the altar and looked up, and I saw this little slide slot in the altar. And so I went and got a priest and said, "Will you tell me what this is?" and showed him what I was talking about. And he said, "Oh, that's the bone of a saint. That's a bone of a martyr. Every Catholic altar has a bone of a dead saint or martyr in it." I said, "Okay." Well, I was probably 11 or 12 at the time. And it wasn't until about 5, 6, 7 years ago that I was listening to this girl, Savali, who is a Illuminati defector, and she was telling stories about these satanic rituals, these sacrifices that they used to do underneath the Vatican. And she said something that caught me. She said that they would chop up these babies' bones and then send them to all the new churches. And that right there was kind of eye-opening to me. I said, "Oh my goodness, what are the chances that we've got every Catholic church is worshiping over an altar that has a bone of a child that was sacrificed to Satan in it?" Crazy thought, but at the same time, those when you hear something one end and something that corroborates with something you heard way earlier in your life, it just really kind of opens your eyes. And with the whole world of satanic abuse and the idea of Pizzagate coming out within these last couple of weeks or months, what's your opinion on all that? And has your research shown you any of that to be as prevalent as some people think it is?
Oh yeah, for sure, brother. I remember Zvali's revelations a few years back. That was really interesting. There was also the other guy, John Collins. He disappeared too. He was a defector from the Collins family. He revealed a lot of things like that. There was also Paul Bonacci, with the Franklin cover-up there, where all of these things have come out. Pizzagate is much, much, much bigger than we can possibly fathom. And all of these buildings, these Freemasonic buildings that are put up, you can rest assured that there will be a baby victim's bones at the cornerstone, at the foundation of all of these buildings, or a live baby in the cement or in the walls, and several, if not just one. So you will find that people will be discovering this a lot more. They have already. They've, the tradition goes back, thousands of years. All empires have done this. They kill a victim and put his remains in the building to bless that building. This is demonic.
Yep.
It's not demigogic at all, or I should say, that's the wrong word, but it's not from the demigods. Demigods are always serving others and returning back to source. Okay, they are the heroes who we are when we get on the path of truth, and then we are ostracized for doing so.
Yeah, that's the truth, and you have no choice once you've woken up to it. I mean, you feel like you couldn't do a bad thing if you wanted to, but you would never want to. It's just and with the satanic ritual abuse, we did big work into the Hampstead case, interviewing the mother, and that one still bothers me because there's still so many people out there that call it a hoax, and they're poor researchers because the evidence is right in front of you. You just need to take 3 hours and watch the interviews with the children, and you'll know right away. But they are too worried about this hoax. Everything's a hoax, and they don't realize that they're contributing to the ritual slaughter and raping of children. That's more upsetting than anything to me.
Oh, it is, and they call themselves truthers, and they stand up on their soapboxes, and yet they're denying more than half of the truth coming their way because they just haven't got the intelligence capacity to actually understand what truth is. They're so deluded, man. They are so deluded, and it is, and they're hurting themselves, others, and everything. They're their own worst enemies. They're paving their beautiful road to hell. Basically, is what they're doing. So,
my question though would be about the satanic abuse, because I know you having kind of the same religious understanding as we have. What do you attribute that to? Is it their own personal demons that they are sacrificing these babies to, or do you believe in an actual the idea of Satan or an overpowering evil entity, or is it more of a confusion and a lack of understanding of true light and love? What do you attribute that to?
Well, both 18th century occultist Helena Blavatsky and Thomas H. Burgoyne pointed to a sphere like a chakra, and everything has 7 chakras. Our body has 7 chakras. So all organisms, the earth has 7 chakras, okay? Mercury, moon, they all have their own system of 7. Okay, so the earth's animal chakra, that would be probably the solar plexus chakra, I'm thinking, because that's our animal mind. That's where we get our instinctive thinking from, okay? And that's where all your mundane people out there, all your literalists and worldly people who are totally imbued in the Mayan illusion and are sleepwalking, that's their mind. The yellow chakra is, they haven't even gone to the heart chakra where they can think from the heart, and which is crucial for a human being. That's minimum for salvation, the heart chakra. So this sphere is called the dark satellite. Thomas H. Burgoyne calls it the dark satellite. And Blavatsky says that from this sphere are all the demented demons and the ones going down, the Nephilim who are going down, who are being thrust down by universal energy. They are being rejected and judged downward. There's two ways, like fusion and fission. the journey of the soul is one or the other, okay? So when you reach the arc of going down, like the prodigal son, you repent, then you go back to your father's kingdom, okay, with repentance in your heart. These ones have not repented. Look around, you still see Barack Obama, he still wants to hurt us. He's only got a week left and he wants to hurt us, and Soros and all of these criminals. They just want to hurt us. They pulled off Fort Lauderdale. A lot of people can see through that crisis acting, but others still don't, right? So these people are demonic bloodlines. They're not human bloodlines. Queen Elizabeth, the Guelphs, the Saxe-Coburg-Gothers, these are all vampire bloodlines. All they want to do, they won't repent. They will not repent. They'll have to go to jail. They will be judged soon by universe. And they're demonic, basically. And they are controlled by the egregore who is called Ob, hence Obama. Ob is the name of this orb. And Thomas H. Burgoyne says the dark satellite is full of all the animals, and they are the animal soul of the earth. And so these people are possessed by it. They're run by these vicious animals, because animals can be vicious. They're beautiful animals on one hand, like some pet dogs and cats, they're loving and only loving, whereas others are vicious. And so Thomas H. Burgoyne says, here is the one half of all evil on this plane, and the other half is, Blavatsky said, is the Vatican, and so did Burgoyne. They pointed to that as the source. And so they act together, one causally and one on the plane of effect. So as soon as truth manifests on this plane, the Jesuit army is out there to snuff it out and persecute it and ridicule it. And our sciences of astrology have to go underground, and we are belittled as pseudoscientists and demonic divinizers, and yet we are the ones who are explaining energy and working with energy truthfully as we should by law of the universe. So we are God servants. We worship the truth. We worship the love and the light that is. We don't run from it and worship the darkness.
I have a question about the children. I'm on the same page as what you're saying about the evil demon people, but in terms of the children that this is happening to, or even has been, and now they're adults, is there any saving them from having to go through this stuff? Or, it seems almost like if that's the case, that these evil non-human beings are just going to keep doing all this stuff. It almost seems like it's not in our power that we can actually save children from this. Does that make sense? Know what I'm saying?
Yep. Look, in Bhagavad Gita, it says that Krishna will vanquish the demons when it's the right time. The scriptures all talk about this vanquishing of the demons. Hence, they'll go off this plane down to the 7 subterranean hellish planets where they come from. And so the children that they are sacrificing, this is the pure, they represent the pure consciousness that is coming through and being born on our plane now to show us their glory of oneness. So these children are unique. Hence, they get vaccinated, fluoridated as soon as possible, educated, 5 years old in kindergarten. Get them in there, bang, let the Jesuits' army take over with their little globe sitting on the teacher's desk, and all of these lies. And what they're doing is they're actually eating their life force, their pure magnetism, because they know the source of all energy is the dielectric charge and the magnetic discharge. They know that there is the longitudinal spiritual energy force, and it's stronger with the children. The children are more longitudinal, horizontal. We're the ones who go noisy vertical. We're the ones who like this divergent centrifugal scattering of energies, and hence, the electronic grid. Look at it. We're paying for it, aren't we? We're paying for a vibration.
Which is there without the money being paid for it. When you talk about these, the children, and they are the closest any of us are to the creation or back to the source. Do you see, where do you list the Zionists versus Freemasonry versus the Vatican, the Jesuits? are they all just the same kind of parasitic force, allowing each other to operate and kind of control their each and own sections, or do you think of it as being a group that's under, the Rothschilds or the World Banks? Where do you kind of separate those groups?
Okay, well, empire builders is what they are, bloodlines. Now, there's aristocratic, Plato version, republic version, meritocracy type bloodlines, and there are oligarchic Aristotle blue blood type money elite ruling families, which have a lot of these demonic bloodlines. Mm-hmm. This is why they went after the Merovingians and then founded the Carolingians, Charlemagne, and all of the French version of these demonic blue blood oligarchic money powers. They are mixed with the Khazarian Hyksos, so-called Jewish bloodlines. They are Roman aristocracy. What does that mean? Don't be confused with just Roman, okay? Then they went to Venice, and they are now the Venetians, who since the 1200s and the Crusades have ruled the world through the Doge of Venice and the 24 demonic bloodlines that rule the Council of Venice, okay? And they control all the ports, maritime law, and everything. They're demonic bloodlines. They've destroyed all the good bloodlines like the Romanovs and all of these, and they've installed their Saxe-Coburg-Gotha Guelph dynasty with the Windsors, and the Hanovers and the Habsburgs and all of these demonic bloodlines. Now, there are aristocratic bloodlines that have been there in the waiting to return. They've been waiting for Saturn to return. Well, he's returned now. It's the age of Aquarius since 2012, and now the heavens have changed. The Jesuits are in the Vatican. The Piscean, Jupiterian Benedict had to resign because the age of Pisces was finished in 2012. So the Saturnian Black Jesuits are now in power, and so the heavens have changed. There are new laws. There are new things to consider in the way the world works. You will find that these bloodlines now will have to disappear because they are exposed. The scriptures said that all that was hidden will be revealed and that everything will be judged. And so they are being judged. We have the internet, which is like an eye on the world. As soon as we hear of false flag attacks, within minutes there's a video showing that it's a hoax. They're done. So what will happen is the aristocracy, the red blood type good people, will return to, and this is prefigured in the Republicans are red and the Democrats are blue. Rest assured, you'll find that at the root of it is the will of humanity to undo themselves, disengage themselves from this parasitic, vampiric energy sapping of the bloodlines, the blue bloodlines, and all of their wealth, and sticking it to us, making life more and more difficult. And so all these things were prophesied, that we would be released from this bondage. The children of Israel would be released. So what is a Jew? Well, it's very important to understand that it is not a race and it's not even a religion. It's a caste. Okay? Yeah, there's 4 castes like they have in the East. The Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras. Well, we have the Hebrews at the top, the Jews, then the Israelites, then the Christians at the bottom. And this is not me saying it. This is the Reverend Robert Taylor in the early 1800s in his book, The Devil's Pulpit, exposing the Freemasonic caste system that we have, and hence the Jew is a caste. So when you see these so-called Jews at Goldman Sachs and crypto Jews like the Bush's family and everything like that, Jew, Jesuit, same stuff. They are the army. The Jews are the Freemasonic army. The Jesuits are the Catholic army that are protecting the black nobility demonic bloodlines.
Absolutely. And speaking of the bloodlines, it's a question I like to ask everybody because it's one of those things that I think everyone has looked into, and they all have their own opinion. What is your opinion of Kennedy and being part of the bloodline families? Do you think that he was trying to do what's right and was killed for it, or are you someone in the camp of he was just pushing the agenda like all those after him?
No, well, I would say that he was of more of an aristocratic, more intelligent soul group, and he is born in Joseph Kennedy's father was definitely a naughty boy, and was involved with a lot of mafia there. And so a lot of these families, you can look around at some of these big bloodline names, DuPont and all of these. Some of them have a mixture of good people in there that really do look after us and are preventing their nastier cousins, the blue bloods, from wreaking havoc entirely on this plane. This is why the New World Order's had so much trouble establishing itself, because there's been so much resistance. Look what the Romanovs did in 1812 at the Council of Vienna when the Rothschilds first wanted their League of Nations, which they got in 1919, then their United Nations in 1945. They tried to pull this stuff off in 1812, man. Then you had all of these councils after that, and they swore that they would get the Romanovs, and they did 100 years later in 1917 with the so-called Bolshevik Revolution. The Rothschilds have been managing the Vatican coffers, the Vatican Swiss accounts, since 1823, when Charles Rothschild in Naples went to Rome and signed a deal for his brothers Jacob and Nathan in England to run the Vatican's monies. So what we're looking at here is a family which is the most saturated with blue blood, demonic, draconian blood. That's why they're so prestigious, because they are the Pendragon. The Pendragon. The Rothschilds actually hold that title. They're nothing special. They're just cowards. They've caused all the wars since the French Revolution and all the bloodshed together with the Vatican and the Jesuits. But they're just
hacking both sides. You win no matter what. People die and you live and make money. That's their methodology. Nice one.
Yeah, nothing personal. It's just business.
Yeah, exactly. Just a life here and there, just so that we can enslave you and everything. It is terrible.
What demons do.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I really do think that Kennedy was, I think that he saw what was going on and
like a black sheep of the family, but like reversed.
Right. Yeah, he was just, and he started. I think that he did kind of know he was going to die for what he was saying. I think that he wasn't afraid to die. I think he was in some pain with his back and just kind of knew it was going to happen, but he was going to get out as much as he could to help us. And, too bad people didn't really see it. I know for us, you watch the Zapruder film, and, I didn't realize till a couple of years ago that film wasn't even shown until 10 years after he was killed. So it's just another doctored piece of evidence. So they've made it impossible to research that. It's the same methodology that NASA uses with their nonsense. They make sure that you can't disprove them. You basically, like you said, it's two minds. Either you can look at something and you can recognize truth when it's right in front of you, or you're afraid to be a stand-up person and come out and say, that looks fake, because the intellectual world considers it real and considers people went to the moon. And, that's why I do think that there's two minds. Either you can watch the footage and the evidence we have for the moon landings and say, bullshit, or you're somebody who is so afraid of stepping out and saying something different than what the mainstream's saying. And, that's the trap I think they built, because there's so many people that just will not even look at the evidence of a moon landing because they're afraid of being that person who's called a conspiracy theorist. Just another CIA made-up word to demonize people when they're not conspiracy theories. When you have evidence behind them, they turn into a conspiracy. There's no more theory there. The theory is if you don't have any evidence and you're just making wild accusations. As soon as there's evidence, they're no longer a theory. So that's the way I feel, at least with Kennedy and that whole picture. See here, we got 2 minutes left till the break, so we got some time. Any more questions, babe, for Santos?
None that I can think of right now.
Okay.
I just like hearing him talk because he has so much connection.
I know,
just love it.
So great. There's so many connections being made.
Drinking it all in.
What I want to talk about when we get back, well, I'll ask you first if you've done any research into it. Have you, talking about Josephus and his writings, have you ever looked at the connection between King Isaides and Jesus? Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, well, look, the Essenes, Essa means Jesus, okay? Now, the Essenes, the Therapeutai and the Telestoi and all of these desert dwellers outside of Jerusalem and Alexandria and all of these centers of Platonic learning, hundreds of years before the historical Roman Jesus, the Essenes were referring back to an Essa from Egypt, and there was a Cresta in Egypt, the Christ, and so whenever you hear of these names like Herod, that's just another way of saying hero, or Pharaoh, Herod, same as Harold and Herald, and this is all to do with the sun. Yeshua means the sun, Christ means the sun, Hercules means the sun, Samson means the sun, Shem, little. So, what was the name of this king you just mentioned? Esed?
Well, we could talk, it's Isaides.
Isaides.
His mother was Queen Helena, but there's a whole story that goes along with the Shroud of Turin, and it actually being a drawing that somebody did of King Isaides. And when they were writing the Council of Nicaea, 325, that they brought up the fact that they had this basically it was a painting of the person King Isaides, and they decided to pass it off as being the shroud of
that laid over Jesus when he was dead.
Right, and it's just an interesting story because really when you go back and look at King Isaides, his life is basically, they stole a lot of his information, put that into the Bible, and that's kind of what I think, at least in my research, is the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is that Shroud of Turin because it's the thing that the Knights Templar, they had
Parson, Housing and Urban Development, and Wilbur Ross for Commerce.
Democrats on Capitol Hill are calling for a bipartisan independent commission to look into Russia's meddling with the election. California Congressman Eric Swalwell says a transparent probe is needed.
The president-elect has consistently undermined the findings of our intelligence community. His efforts to do so has sowed doubt among the American people about whether Russia was really behind this.
Democrats in the House have reintroduced legislation today to set up the panel to look into interference in the election by Moscow. I'm Ann Cates.
You are now tuned into the truth frequency.
We are TFR. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome back. You're listening to Monday Night Raw, and we are here with Santos Bonacci. Before we went to break, we were just talking a little bit about some of the research we had done into the, what I considered to be, I think, the Holy Grail, or what they were talking about, and that being the shroud. But you've seen the forgery, right? That's in the, I know a lot of Christians go to the Flavius Josephus to get their historical Jesus. But have you looked, you've looked into that whole idea of that being a kind of a clear later addition to his writings, right?
Oh yeah, that was definitely they've been
fit.
So obvious.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, those are redacted works by the Jesuits. So they're interpolations.
How much of our written history is, in your opinion, trustable? I know it's the way we look at it. That I think once you get past 1700, for me, it's once you realize that these Jesuits were taking over, and I don't even think that really Copernicus wrote the book. I think they ascribed it to him after the fact. But how much of our history do you really think that we can trust, knowing that men have changed books? I know, us being a bookseller, I've often questioned all the time. I wanted to see, when did Josephus say that he wrote this book? It says in here that he wrote it in 70 A.D. When did he say he wrote it? And they say, oh, well, we don't know because we've changed it. Whatever date was in there, we changed to be 70 A.D. because that time came, ascribing 70 A.D. to that time period came way after him. So you'd think he would have written in a book what the hell year he thought it was. And that's always bothered me, is that they rewrote everything. The whole idea of the I before the one, in those early years, 1200 may have been 200. How much do you, when you look at your research, how much do you think has been completely altered, and how much do you think we can trust?
Not much, brother. You have to be a good researcher, and you have to do it thoroughly and properly and with understanding. For instance, I'll give you an idea. Like, if you're really looking for a historical Jesus, you would go to either Josephus, Plutarch, or Philo from Alexandria. They were all contemporaries of each other, 1st century, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Philo wrote so many books, so did Josephus, and Plutarch wrote 88 books. Okay, he was in Greece. He was more of the Platonic Grecian philosophical school, really. They all were.
Mm-hmm.
But none of them, not one of them, wrote anything about Jesus Christ the Saviour. And these were like, living 10, 20 years after he died. So surely they would have mentioned something about this so long-awaited Messiah. These were the three greatest writers of that time that we can point to if history is correct. And there's nothing there. There's no Jesus. There's nothing. Just silence. Of course, the Christians will say, "Oh yes, but see, he said not to make him famous. He said to be quiet and let's do this secretly." No. Look, if God, think about it. There are no writings of Jesus,
right?
And there's been a Jesus for thousands of years prior to that, because there's evidence. I've shown in my presentations. There's nativity scenes in Egypt from the 18th dynasty. and you've got 4 panels in which you see everything that happened. Gabriel telling Mary she's going to have a child. Then you see the three kings coming to worship the boy, and the boy being born and sat on his mother's lap. And this is Christ years and years and years before Christ, right? So what's going on is this beautiful Christian science. It's just the science of light. It's just telling you how light gets crucified on the cross, the transverse wave, electromagnetism, when it decides to materialize, and the Word was made flesh. The Word is what? Sound, sonoluminescence, and it was made flesh. What's flesh? Well, this table, this computer, the flesh, the solid, because the spirit is gas and fire, and the flesh is water and earth. There's 2 elements of flesh, water and earth, and your body's made of that, bones and blood, and urine and saliva and cerebrospinal fluids. But you've got tissue, muscle, bones, that's flesh. And the Word was made flesh. It's telling you a simple science. Light, longitudinally, pulsates and creates flesh, divergent, transverse, vertical, scattered energy, just here and there, temporally, and then withdraws that vibration and pulls it back in and stays in its pulse. See, the pulsing universe does not have to go transversal. Electromagnetism is a hybrid and depends entirely on the two superior field modalities of dielectricity and magnetism, without which electricity would never exist. And that is the Son, the Father, the Mother, and the Son, or the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. It's always these trinities, and it's always only three field modalities that ever was and ever will be. Dielectricity, magnetism, bell, electricity. See your name, Campanella? Well, Campanella, L is the bell, electricity. Campanella means what?
Little bell.
Little bell. Campana is a big bell, the ones that you see at the steeple of the chapel or the cathedral when you listen to the gospel from your Bible. L is electricity, red and blue. And that's it. And it's the inferior mundane energy of God's source, which is dielectricity, which is black light. And black light is the source, white light is the force. And so that's all that's going on. Nothing else is going on, nothing. There's only those three field modalities, and it's up to us to understand them. If we don't, we do not understand God, and we will be forever in darkness, groping about.
Yeah, and I've often tried to speak on the fact that if the only important thing or the main important thing was accepting Jesus as your Savior or worshiping Him as God, then there would be verse after verse after chapter of Jesus telling you that flat out, I am God, you are to worship me. If your salvation depends on it, it wouldn't be veiled, and it wouldn't be a mystery that you kind of have to read into a couple lines that He says. It wouldn't be that way. And he even confuses things when He says, no one has seen God, no one has heard His voice. It's kind of telling you that the stories that you read earlier are not talking about the Creator. No one has seen God, nobody's heard His voice. You would die if you saw Him. And by saying that, He's standing in front of you. So obviously He wouldn't say that to somebody meaning, I'm God, because He wouldn't stand in front of somebody and say you've never seen Him or heard His voice. He was talking. You would have heard His voice if that was God. But I just wanted to read real quick just the one line from Josephus that he did talk about Jesus, so you can see how people can see how he got put in there. Because basically,
this is funny.
20 chapters of multiple verses, a huge book, the history of the Jews, and you can read it and you learn how this guy writes. He's an author, and then all of a sudden in a verse that's just thrown in there, he's talking about the wickedness of something. Then all of a sudden it says, now there was about this time Jesus, a wise man, if it be lawful to call him a man, for he was a doer of wonderful works, a teacher of such men as received the truth with pleasure. He drew over to him both many of the Jews and many of the Gentiles. He was the Christ, and when Pilate, the suggestion of principal man amongst us, had condemned him to the cross, those that loved him at the first did not forsake him, for he appeared to them alive again the third day, as the divine prophets had foretold these and 10,000 other wonderful things concerning him, and the tribe of Christians so named from him are not extinct at this day. And then he picks up where the other verse left off and never mentions it again. I mean, it's just so ridiculous because when you read his writings, if he all of a sudden was telling you that there was somebody who raised from the dead, you would not have one sentence about the person who, if you can call him a man, I mean, who would ever say that? You have to, you may hear that and think, well, I could see him saying that. But if you read the whole thing, read the history of the Jews, and look at that one verse just thrown in there out of nowhere, and you can realize real quickly that it's another Jesuit late, within the last 500 years probably addition. Who knows when they wrote that, but certainly not written by Josephus. It doesn't even fit his writing style.
Yep, no, it doesn't. It does not at all. And certainly if he was going to point out that he was a holy man, he would be profaning his Jewish position for a start, by giving him, Christ-like holiness, because they don't respect, that kind of a Messiah. They're waiting for a different kind of Messiah. And so it's got interpolation written all over it, and then there's the other three. There's Tacitus and Pliny the Elder and then Suetonius, and basically they just mention a Crestus or something like that, because Christ, Isis, Issa, this Isha, you can go to Japan. I've been to the grave of Jesus Christ in Japan. It's called the grave of Isikiri. Isi, Essa, Kiri, Christ, Cristo. You go to India, in Kashmir, there's another one, because Christ is light. The crucifixion of light is the symbol of the cross, because that fourness, that fourfold cross, represents the torus field, the dielectric field, and the divergent magnetism which comes out of it to create like a swastika type electrical symbol. Mm-hmm. And the yin and yang and the cross, all of these symbols, that's all they're doing. There's nothing else under the sun bar the torus field.
Right, and the Nazi symbol, it's just the reverse, right, of that creating symbol that they used to have, is that what you were saying?
Well, the Nazis turned it around because now they made it dynamic. Rather than vertical, they positioned it in the position of the multiply rather than the plus symbol. So now that means the gods of nature are with us. So it's basically just accepting a symbol of the torus field as your symbol, which is the appropriate thing to do. Everyone always has and always will. Whether it's the cross, the yin and yang, or whatever it is, they all accept that the God force is dielectricity, and may that source be with you. Yeah. So you bring the symbol of that energy, the cross, with you. It's not a historical thing, it's a atemporal thing. It's something that happens. No one made this up. It just happens. And so, when you think of, has history been tampered with, it doesn't matter because there's only now. There's only, history's gone. The time illusion comes from the transverse wave. You see, if you get a rope and you tug at it longitudinally, you put a rope and there's another guy holding the other end, and you pull at it, right? Instantaneous action at a distance. That's the transverse longitudinal spiritual wave of the universe. That's the particle, the pulse that they call a particle, the ning-nongs. Ning-nong, I think, is an Australian version of... No, I won't be rude. But anyway.
And the easiest way that I've been able to show, at least to myself, that the whole idea of time is the illusion, because there is only the present, is the simple paradox of start three people in San Francisco. One person goes around the world to the east. The other person goes around the world to the west. Say it takes them a day to go. They're going to all get back to San Francisco, and there will be 3 different days. Based on our time system, you've got somebody who's going to think it's the 14th. The person who stayed in San Francisco is going to think it's the 15th. And the person who went east is going to think it's the 16th. And, I mean, that alone tells you that none of those people experienced any more or less time. But based on our system of timing, which the sun and moon can keep better time than our calendars can, you basically realize that the construction of time is an illusion. That we are all just living in the present. There's only thinking about the past, but it's gone. You can't change it. There is no time travel, and the future is yet to come. So it's not here yet. It's just something that may happen. So, I mean, for me, all there is the present, and I think that's the way you want to live, so that you don't, harp on things that you did wrong in the past. You learn from your mistakes and press on, and look forward to doing better things in the future.
Yeah, time and space, they are not, autonomous principalities unto themselves, like a shadow. A shadow is an absence of light. So you can't reify an absence or a privation. And so time, the temporal and spatial element of our existence, comes from the sine wave, the sin of Eve, our mother who art in heaven, the electromagnetic field modality. But see, we are seeking the magnetodielectric field of modality, a la Eric Dollard. He spoke about this. He spoke about Tesla's longitudinal free energy and Marconi's as the longitudinal magnetodielectric energy, as opposed to what conventional science calls electromagnetism. Mm-hmm. So clearly they are either deliberately hiding this pulse and the fact that there's no particles by building particle accelerators to find them. They're only going to find a pulse eventually, but it's all sort of set up to keep us thinking that we really are in a quantum physical world and it's more real. So what is temporal, they are trying to reify and make real. They're trying to give it reality by doing this, whereas they should be liberating us and teaching us what they already know, and that is that it is a spiritual pulse which creates an illusion of the wave, and not to speak of the more illusory particle, but the wave. And so what they've done is they've tapped into the wave, this divergent scattered energy called electricity, which is the Hertzian wave, which Eric Dollard said is just a totally 95% wasted energy, whereas he said the other one, the longitudinal, is 100% no energy lost at all whatsoever.
And that's exactly what Tesla knew and described and was ready to not take money for, but just to give that secret to the world. And it was hidden, but basically, yeah, at the upper atmosphere where there is no more air pressure, you've got an endless supply of electricity that they're probably tapping right into and charging us money as if it's costing them money to get it. Mm-hmm. It's just right. That's why they've got a pole on the top of every tall skyscraper.
I have a question, actually, now that we've gotten into all this. And it's escaped me, but it's coming back. It's coming back. What is my question? Oh, can the world be changed? And I mean in terms of, is it meant to be? Like, is it meant for the entire world to be awoken and realized, or is this place actually meant to be a place of punishment and learning, and therefore you can't change the whole world? Like, does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah,
totally.
Yep, both are correct. We're not responsible for, let the dead bury the dead is the saying of the scriptures, because the scriptures talk frankly that not all flesh will be saved. Okay, that doesn't mean that's indefinite, not infinite. That's not saying eternally they won't be saved. They will be saved in time, but when it says not all flesh will be saved and there will be an Armageddon and a destruction and all this destruction going on, this is all kind destruction, like you would burn down the forest to regenerate new growth. It's cruel to be kind. And so there are times when the low cycles, like the Kali Yuga, the Iron Ages, where this is more so. Okay, but there is the potential for all to be saved and all awaken. That is the thing that we aspire to. We look forward to that. No one wants anyone to perish. No one. The Creator, no one, not even the evil ones. Everyone likes to maintain their survival, do they not? In whatever form they find themselves. Yeah. So what is happening?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I describe it like the fact that men are always corrupt, and so I think that even if we get over the tyranny we're in now, that it'll probably happen again. Just like you said, it doesn't mean it's going to happen forever and all times, but we understand men, we understand power hungry, money hungry. If more people are honest, well, you've just opened up the pathways to people scamming you, and I think that's kind of the ebb and flow, the give and take, right?
Absolutely. The potential for paradise to be on, and the golden age to be on this plane occurred in the late 1400s with the Renaissance. Even the Hindus talk about this time as the return of the mini golden age, and we're in it, but we don't feel it. Why? Because we've allowed the demons to rule over us. We've allowed them to make paradise a hellhole. So there's the three conditions I spoke of earlier: paradise, purgatory, and hell are the conditions that exist coexistently, co-eternally on this plane that we live on. So we can actually bring the balance back and usher in the paradise here. There will be a degree of suffering. There always is on material planes. There always is. But you can increase the pleasure and the bliss by bringing in the balance. So you guys and our listeners on this show, hopefully, we're not in hell. We may have been. I remember being in hell. It's a condition. It's not a place. And I've been through it. We all have. And now, hopefully, we're in purgatory right now because we're purging, purifying. Pyro means fire, to purify. And so that's purgatory. We are opening our consciousness. We are letting our intelligence guide us. We're seeing the world in new ways all the time. We're growing in truth. And then what will happen is this is the catalyst, the link, the nexus to bring us into paradise. We are the ones, through our leadership, by going first, by taking these outrageous, daring steps that we are to go against convention, we are going to usher in the paradise. That's how it works. And these people are called saviors because they save themselves and others, not just themselves. One who saves himself is like a Neptunian kind of hero. He's not a Jupiterian hero. He's like Hercules, saved himself, but all his men were turned into swine by Circe. And so he's not the complete saviour. But how are we being the complete saviours? Well, we don't sit on our bums and stay at home playing Nintendo. We get on the radio helping people. We make things that will make things simple to help people with truth. We share it. And one person gets the benefit and two people. I'm lucky because millions of people have seen my presentations and write to me daily telling me how their lives have improved by taking the tissue salts, by applying astrological principles in their lives and all the things that syncretism teaches. So I know that I've influenced many people, more than myself, in a good way. Okay, so these are heroes. Herod, hero, Pharaoh. Pharaoh wore that, like the Indian chief wears those plumed crowns. Those crowns, those feathers, those eagle feathers are never allowed to touch the ground as long as that chief wears that on his head. He will never allow those plumes to touch the ground. If he does, he disgraces the heavens and has to desist from being a chief. Because when you open the crown chakra, you are never to return to the land of Canaan to worship false idols. You have to be devoted and you have to stay on that path. Few are the ones who find the road, the twisted and cramped road that leads into everlasting life.
And how hard it was made to find the road when you've got a mainstream media that really, dropped the ball. That's, people depended on the media to be independent and tell the truth and research and investigate. That was originally their job, and that's why NASA got away with everything they do. That's why these false flags get put out in news, and 90% of the world believe it because they haven't woken up to the fact yet that the mainstream media is long ago bought and paid for and is selling you lies. That's what they're in the business of, is selling things. They don't make money by just reporting the truth. They make money by getting you to tune in and to be afraid and in fear and have to tune in the next night to find out, what latest racist thing happened in the world. It's sad because that's really, the media killed it for everybody, in my opinion at least. If you have that independent researching, and that's what we do. That's what we try and do, is research from a point of truth. That you're trying to get truth out and not hurt people, and that's certainly not what the mainstream media does. They could care less if anybody gets hurt because of their news. It's just they're doing a job. They sit at a desk and read a paper,
Yeah,
So-
they're supporting the economic model, and that's their, holy grail. They have to support it and defend the economic model. And
it's all materialism and products placement and ads. And when we get back, we're going to our last break here. I do want you to touch on the idea of the free man movement, something that I think a lot of people find important. And you've been through it. I know you've even spent time behind bars by these people that obviously don't care about anybody but themselves.
That's what's all about. I can't promise you answers and neither can the Woo Crew. but they invite you to join them Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, midnight in the UK, for Freaky Friday, exclusively on Truth Frequency Radio. Spirituality, multiverse, quantum mechanics, the occult, and so much conspiracy analysis that it will make your mind melt. Take my word for it. Freaky Friday. It's more than a show. It's a way of life. I am Stephen Hawking, and I am proud to be a Wookiee.
Real people, real radio. Wherever you are, make it TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome back. That was abrupt. We were talking to Santos Bonacci, and just want to remind you, next week, join us, same bat time, same bat channel. We are going to be talking with Cathexis, and if you don't know who he is, check out his YouTube channel. Great guy, well-spoken, will be an interesting show. And before we left, we were talking to Santos Bonacci, who has dropped so many research gems tonight. And in case we don't get there at the end, a reminder to find Santos on YouTube at MrAstrotheology. That's MR and then Astrotheology. That's his channel, and also at his website, universaltruthschool.com. So please check him out. There's a library of content on his YouTube channel. And Santos, I'd love to hear your history with and your opinion of the free man movement, or the other people know it as the legal name fraud, and your experience with that. And do you suggest people head down that avenue, or where do you stand with it?
Yeah, look, the history would be going like this. There are insiders who have seen the hypocrisy or the fraud of the system, and they have been bold enough to reveal it slowly, at the right time. Because it's very dangerous for an insider to reveal. So I believe that we've been helped in the sovereignty movement by insiders who have known of the Vatican system of enslavement and the personal glossa name, which was basically invented by all those types like Nero, Constantine, and Justinian, and of course Pope Boniface and all of his bulls, papal bulls and stuff like that. Insiders, I think it's the aristocratic part of the inside well-to-do families that have been helping us in the last couple of decades, not only with sovereignty, but with the true nature of our earth, because they know, of course, that it's been suppressed for a couple hundred years now. And I think this is why people get confused, and they say that, it's, this is a Jesuit conspiracy, this flat disc thing, or they'll go the other way and say it's a Masonic thing and everything like that. They're so confused.
Or it's a psyop.
It's funny.
Like that makes sense.
It's a psyop. This is it.
They want you to think your entire education was a scam. That's exactly what they want you to think. Makes no sense.
They don't think, man. They just don't think. This is the thing. That's the extent of their intelligence. And so poor people, I guess we need to feel sorry for them if we're going to be loving and compassionate. So the thing is, these deceptions, they come with the system, but there's always been good people on the inside coming out and sacrificing their lives, and they will be immortal in the next life. Your JFKs and people who stood up and and took the knocks for us and have revealed things at the risk of their life, because it's so dangerous to go against the demonic control of this plane, because it gives them so much energy down there in hell. You know, there are 7 disk planes under our disk Earth, and this is what they call hollow Earth. Actually, they get confused. But according to Srimad Bhagavatam, these are material planes, whereas the 7 above us, they are heavenly and spiritual planets, whereas the heavenly planets below are heavenly material. What does that mean? Well, it means that there's much more luxury down there than there is on this plane, but there's a lot more suffering as well. So these people who populate these planes, they want the wealth and prosperity and all of the material benefits down there, even though they suffer much more than we do. So this is how hell-bent they are on keeping that. But see, they get a lot of energy from our plane, because Sol Invictus, our sun, is the center. It's where people get confused. They call it a heliocentric or geocentric, and they think there's a war between the two. Well, they're both. It's geocentric in that the Earth is the dielectric plane, but it's also heliocentric in that the sun is the chief of magnetic force, which, according to Eric Dollard, is a transformer from primary energy to secondary force. Mm-hmm. And isn't that dielectricity and electricity? Magnetism? Well, yes, it is.
Yep.
That's exactly what...
Without the sun.
Yeah, so the sun is the center because it is the chief life giver. Mm-hmm. The Earth is the chief life supporter. The Earth does not give us our life. Mm-hmm. Our sperm comes from the sun. Everything comes from the sun. The sun is the portal, the God, the Jesus, the Krishna, the Radharani. The sun is every archetype. Nothing escapes the sun. The sun is the ultimate of all archetypes. And his twin brother Saturn is also. But see, if I talk too much on these things, people will get confused. Oh, but you said Saturn. Oh, yeah, but he's evil. But you said he was good. Because they love their limited thinking and they can't expand their consciousness to understand that these are principles. They're not particulars. They're not diffused in the world of attributes. They are principles. Saturn is a principle. And they are archetypes that embody or receptacles of all the archetypes. Saturn has everything in him, and so does the sun. These are the two twins. One is Horus, one is Set. Jesus and Satan. The white guy, the sun is white light, we see with the sun. Hence the sun rules the eyes, Saturn rules the ears. Hence you put the rings of earrings on your ears. Because you don't, at night, you see, Proclus said the thing about the sun, Plato said, the sun needs a third, the sight needs a third thing. The hearing does not. You see, to be able to use your eyes, you need the sun. Simple. Or you need illumination. Yeah. But with your hearing, that's automatic. That's direct. Hearing is just direct. You don't need a mediator. That's why the Son is the mediator. Jesus, the Son. If you have seen me, you have seen the Father. Why? Because if you have seen electrical force, you will know the dielectric non-force.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. What would you say the moon is, in your opinion?
The moon is the letter A of Aum, Om, and it's Krishna, and it is the black light of the unit. It is the dielectric plane. The sun is the magnetic modality of our solar system, and Saturn is the electrical, L. All 7 are the Elohim. Okay, so I've got Tibetan bells here, and they've got 7 elements in them. Gold for the sun, silver for the moon, lead, tin, copper, quicksilver, and iron for Mars. And when I ring those bells, what is bell? Well, campanella, the bell in the church. Well, the Germans call a bell Glocke. And so if you replace the G with a C, you get the English word clock. Why does the clock at 12 midday, when the sun is in the mid-heaven, everywhere around the planet, do you hear the bell? Ding, dong, D-I-N-D-O-N. They are atomic words, like the drummer who plays his tom-toms. Ding, ding dong. The bell, the campanella, is electricity, the 7 colors of the rainbow that make the sound. So it's a chromatic, temporal, spatial world. The chromos, not chronos, time, tempo, but chronos, the 7 colors, Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, that is where we need to study, because those 7 colors, all those colors have different capacitance. Mm-hmm. So blue shift is at the south poles of magnets, which in our Earth, the South Pole, according to Ken Wheeler, is in the North Pole. So blue shift is the healing ray. It has high capacitance, short frequency, high energy wave. Hence, your ultraviolet and your gamma and your X-rays are all dangerous. Well, dangerous because they've got high capacitance, but they're not dangerous. They're high vibrating, which means, they're just a part of the spectrum, which is either close to redshift or blue shift, because there's only that going on. There's no North Pole and South Pole of a magnet. There's redshift or blue shift on a magnet.
Yeah. Now, I have a question about the moon a little more, the phases of the moon and the correlation. I don't know if, I'm sure you know or have looked into or whatever, about the premenstrual cycle according with the moon. What is the connection there and what's the purpose of that? I know it's kind of a weird question, but I'm just wondering about that. If that would
okay. Yeah. Menstrual, mens. Mens is the Latin word for mind. Okay? So man is mano, the hand. Men, M-E-N-S, is mind. The mind of man and the hand of man, mano, mind, mens, is what distinguishes man, the 10-fingered being. So mens is mensil, which is monthly. Menstruate is blood, red. So the moon, the men, the minute hand, the minute moon, all of these words, money comes from the moon, silver in your pocket, some moony in your pocket. All of these words, why? Because the moon is the chief of the color red, blood, menstrual. And so her ray is that low vibrational red, which is the lowest capacitance wave, which means it travels fastest, not necessarily fastest, but furthest in the universe, because it doesn't refract as much. You see the prism of light, you see the blue, the purple end refracts much more than the red. Yeah, right? So the red gets to go further, but the blue has more capacitance. See, big suitcase, more capacity. Little suitcase, little capacity. Opposite with light. And this is what Tesla was trying to say, that you have to understand energy and frequency. He omitted to say that the key word which would have, explained the whole cryptic thing he was trying to suggest, capacitance. We have to understand the capacitance of light. Through magneto-dielectric manipulation, we can point our south poles of our magnets, what we call south poles, there's no such thing. We can the compression blue shift part toward our seeds, our plants, our dis-ease, and we can cure all things with one thing, God force, magnetism. Unconditioned, unlimited, unqualified, omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent God intelligence and person. And we come from that. And one day, when we return to Vrindavan, we will be one inconceivably with God, but with difference. So as for the false teachers who are teaching that we go back and we're one with God, no, this is a false teaching. It's half-truth. Mm-hmm. Inconceivable oneness with difference is the highest of all the doctrines that will ever be revealed to your sweet ears.
So that makes sense with the whole the premenstrual cycle things, because that was, I had talked to Shuri about it too, because it bothers me every time it comes around and it getting such a bad, I hate, it's just dirty and gross. No, I'm just kidding. And I feel bad. I'm like, you should just leave, because everything's going to be terrible. But really, it's just like it's a horrible state of 4 days that is just like the worst. But then Cherie told me, you know, like just to redirect that energy. And now having you said that with the whole magnetism and it, and I always had a problem with, is the premenstrual cycle natural? Because I hate it. It seems like a curse. But really, if that energy is coming from the moon, it's like that frequency and it's happening for a reason, then I shouldn't direct that energy into a selfish, like, ill, gross. I need to redirect that out into something good or whatever. So it kind of actually now it connects everything a little more for me, much more. So thank you.
Spot on. Yeah, that's perfect.
Oh, cool.
Let me ask you about part of the Bible. I know you've done great work and look into Revelation. What do you make of the promise of the healing of the nations that's found in Revelation 22, and the discussion of the tree and the healing of the nations being on both sides? You know, what do you see into that?
Well, this healing is, Missa just spoke about the menstrual cycle and all the pain and how you can invert that into good. Well, you see, this is, the question was, is it natural? Well, depends which nature, mundane nature or supernatural, the physical or the metaphysical, the mundane or the transcendent, because there's two natures. Yes, it's natural here under the moon. All things under the moon, wars, sex, fighting, love-making, passion, all the three modes of goodness, ignorance, and passion. This is all natural in the demigod's world, the bell, campanella, the bell of the El Belohim, electricity. In this transverse wave world of temporal, spatial, chromatic existence, yes, it's natural. You see, then you'll have someone extremely and supposedly he thinks he's learned, and he'll say, oh yes, but the demigod, it says in the Gnostic Gospels that this is an abortion and it's a bad world. Well, it is relatively. That's not an absolute truth. Please, it's a relative truth. It's saying it's an abortion compared to the transcendental world, which suffers no vibration and no temporal conditions. So the healing of the nations is when we discover magnetism, the magnificent Mother Mary, the pure energy of the longitudinal spiritual pulse, and we will be healed through magnetism. Sri Yukteswar in the book The Holy Science said that he called it divine magnetism, and he said we are suffering in ignorance because we only have, in this new Dvapara Yuga, he said we came out of the Treta Yuga 300 years ago, which coincided with the discovery of electricity. And he said the age before that was more ignorant. That was the Kali Yuga. Now we're in the Dvapara Yuga, age number 2, the bronze, and we have discovered electricity. And this will lead us to the Treta Yuga, beyond which is the Satya Yuga. Remember Sat, Chit, Ananda. Sat meaning the fourth gold and beautiful age. But in the Silver Age, he says, man will discover divine magnetism. And then he will work with magnetism. He says, once we discard with that transverse wave and the burning energy of electricity, and we go to the proper wave, which Schallberger called implosion, not explosion, charge, discharge, counter space, then we will be gods on this plane. We have to move away from electromagnetism. We go to magneto-dielectricity, a la Eric Dollard, Ken Wheeler, all of these guys, Schallberger, they all said that. They all said it. Tesla, all of them. They all were aware of the field, which quantum quackery wants to call quantum fluid now. Black holes and dark matter and all sorts of quantities of stuff, muons, and Walter Russell called them, particles of illusion and delusion. They're just different rates of what? Energy. Look at the word energy. Isn't it an anagram of green? Yeah.
Yep.
Understand energy, guys. The green middle light of 12 petals, that's the 12 sections astrologically of the ecliptic, which you model around the torus field, starting in the center in the dielectric plane, Aries. The horns of Aries tell you about the golden section Fibonacci ratio. Taurus, look at the symbol. Look at all the glyphs of astrology, all the glyphs of your 26-letter alphabet, all your numbers. Look at every Chinese character, Arabic, whatever. You will see Taurus fields. That's all there is. There's only the gyroscopic atomic Taurus fields in existence. Nothing else manifests. There's no other form of manifestation. Krishna only has his one form, which is the cows, the gopis, the Tauruses. The cows are the Taurus fields of Krishna. And his flute is the sonoluminescent sound Om that he produces to generate all other harmonic resonances, to gather little gyroscopes together to create bodies which are your anatomy, atom of your body, and therefore you have a body which is a bioorganism which is electromagnetic, and it is a incoherent form of electricity. If your body was coherent, like a laser, coherent light as opposed to white incoherent light, then you would be, magnets would just get stuck to you. But you are magnetic. It's just that your magnetic field is incoherent. It's not like a laser which is coherent. And force is a multiplicative. It's not additive. It's like the fasciae of Rome. If you get one stick, it has a certain amount of energy of its own. But if you bind it together with 20 other sticks, that's not 20 times stronger. It's more like 1,000 times stronger because it's multiplicative. So when you get coherent light, you make a magnet. That's coherent field laser, basically. And so this is what is going on. There's just two types of magnetism, coherent and incoherent.
We have about 5 minutes left, but I just wanted to take it back to the free man movement. And if you've got suggestions of where people can go to learn about that. And do I have it right that you basically stood up for your rights and they put you behind bars for that? Is that basically what happened?
Well, essentially, if I had have known exactly what I was doing, which I thought I did and I didn't, they would not have had their way with my body. So this is the difficult thing of law against legal. And if you study the Gospels and things, like Jesus' lawsuit, for instance, where Caesar says, you are the king of the Jews, and he says, you are saying that. Mm-hmm. Well, essentially because he did. He just said that, and so it's an implication. It's a presumption, and so this is the king is asking the questions. So if I had have been less belligerent and Aryan and Calabrian when I was being processed through their admiralty courts, and I had have acted more like a king, knowing who I was, enthroned on God's Christ consciousness, Krishna conscious. Well, I would have been asking the questions, and yet I was deceived by, the force of, say, the guns pointing at you, the supposed authority, the sweeping power of supposed power over an individual. All of these things consume you in the moment, and you forget. And the Christ says, do not practice your words, what you are to say in your heart, because the Holy Spirit will be with you. In other words, it's saying the demons will put you under 10 days of tribulation. They will drag you through their courts and they will do what they do. But just trust in me, and all you need to do is ask the question. So I would say learn how to ask questions. What is this place of business? Is this a place of business? Is this a lawful place of business? Is it a de jure court or a de facto court? Who are you? Are you speaking in your man, or are you speaking in your person? Am I referring to you in person? Where is the paperwork where you can hear me? Because I'm a living flesh blood man, and this court cannot hear me. It's a dead court.
Have you seen the videos with Ernie Turtlegate, or I don't know how you say his last name? He's the Silveran man. He got caught with illegal fishing, but he basically just find it on YouTube. He walks into court. You can just put in Mountain Man, I think, walks out of court. But he does exactly what you're saying. He's just questioning them on who are you to question me, and doesn't give a name. And basically, at the end of that thing, he just walked out.
The judge walked out first. And
because they couldn't I mean, he just stands up for himself and being, like you said, he acts like he's the king, that he is allowed to search for food. He is allowed to feed his stomach when he's hungry. And, who are they to stop him? Because they call him a certain name that he certainly doesn't let them call him that, because he says, I don't know that name that you're getting. I don't know who you're talking to. I'm a living man. I'm right here. Stop calling that, all capitals name that's on that paper. So
yeah. He was right in what he said. Only he made two mistakes. After which, a few days later, he was actually arrested, and they took him in. Yeah. There was another video, but he was correct. But he made two mistakes, which I did, and that was he was belligerent in asking the questions. He was showing belligerence. You don't show belligerence. You're at default at the moment. You show belligerence. You must be loving, and that's what I did. I brought my Aryan fight with me, and I was belligerent in court, and I asked one too many questions and made one too many statements. If you make a statement, then you'll be held accountable, and they will, have you there forever defending that statement. So you have to learn how to ask questions, being honor, like Jesus was, and because that's the model that they use in court, how to be in honor and how to stay in the private and not be in the public. There's a lot to learn. I've made a lot of mistakes. I hope people learn from my mistakes. I sincerely do. And I have. But I've also revealed a lot of things that have helped a lot of people too. So we just have to now consolidate our losses and wins. We've lost some battles, but we will win the war. It is a spiritual war, and ultimately, you and I are the heroes. You are the Jesus, you are the Krishna, you are the Radharani, you are all archetypes in one. All the stories that were ever written were written about you and I. There's no one else to look forward to save. You will save yourself. The Christ is within. Colossians 1:26-27. The temporal one is an illusion. All temporal, spatial stuff is an illusion. There's nothing literal in the Bible. It's a literary masterpiece. There's nothing factual in the Bible.